Welcome, everybody. Basically, what my entire thing today is about, many of us in the consulting industry, it's great when we get to work with large companies, but more often than not, we spend a lot of time with small and medium businesses. Uh, what we're going to be talking about a lot today is how a small or medium business can transform and elevate and act just like an enterprise and run things at scale. Because that's kind of the beauty of not just using Workspace ONE, but using other technologies together with it to deliver a level of synergy to basically create these great user experiences. And so I'm going to have a little introduction for those of you who don't know who I am. We're going to talk about this question that I'm here to discuss today, some consumerization stuff, the transformation, and how we extend and enhance all of it. And so we'll get into it a little bit. So Explore was not just me, it was somebody who worked for me, but it's me and, my alter ego today, just to kind of give you a little bit of background. Mobile-jon, I'm ex-BlackBerry, ex-many fintechs at this point. My background and my upbringing is I was a retailer until I was 29, transitioned to IT late, developed my entire career based off of effort and needing to actually understand how things work. And I've been very fortunate, made some great friendships and partnerships along the way, like people like Johan, who have helped challenge me to be as good as people like Johan. And I'm fortunate that I've now gotten to where I am, where I can help so many people today. Unlike many people in the consulting business, I don't sell. I don't try to say, come give me money. More of my thing and what I do is outreach and helping others do better and be more and deliver more. And so what I can pride myself in saying is I'm one of the few bloggers that actually responds to people. A lot of my experiences with we'll use Christian with Microsoft, who everyone's very familiar with. A lot of these people, you'll respond on their blogs and they're not responsive at all, right? And I've always prided myself on being very open and talking and loving to actually just help solve problems. And that's kind of a lot of who I am, and I'm not going to waste much more time talking about that, but that's kind of who I am. Now let's talk about the company that my lovely wife and I are, who's, sitting behind Johan, is here, has joined us today. So Centerex is a pharmaceutical company or a clinical research organization. Those of you, I'm the only American here, so you probably won't understand what a lot of this stuff means. But we're a women's business enterprise. We're a disability-owned business, Diversity Alliance for Science, and also a Green Business Bureau Gold Certified business, which is a green business certification in America. And as you can see here, as I just said, women's-owned boutique. We also are a VMware partner in combination with that. But like I said, my whole thing is really more about outreach. I have some clients that have come to me after some stuff that I've done. Amazingly to me, most of my clientele is based on on-premise, which is weird because you guys do a lot of on-prem. In America, that's not really the case. It's more predominantly cloud. We've been fortunate this year. We were the 27th fastest growing company based on Boston Business Journal. For those of you who don't know, Boston is a city in America. In Massachusetts, which is a state in America. That's our geographic lesson, because probably most people don't know what Boston is, but that's okay. And a lot of our focus as a business is on this concept of being kind of the land of misfit toys. I think that this is something that all of us as consultants and people who are growing consulting firms can take a lot of pride in, is that we've plucked people from all these bad things, right? We've taken these people who were in bad situations, bad positions, and we've created a place for them to thrive. And I think that that resonates probably with a lot of us in the consulting industry, right? Is that we've worked at all these different places, especially in consulting, and what I've told Francisco from ITQ many times, what I love and respect about ITQ, I think there's one or two of them here. You can tell everyone's got orange in the whole damn place, right? It's like 40% ITQ in here. Is that most firms in consulting, they're just not good to their people. And that's what I've always respected a lot about what ITQ has built, is that they really pride themselves on being good to people, the gift basket stuff, the onboarding, and the way that they do things. And I've always had a lot of respect for that, because we do a lot of that at my wife and I's company. We have a lot of pride in that. And those of you who've worked at other places that aren't ITQ can all speak to, right, that's just not the way it is. And that's kind of a summation of all that. So let's talk about the existential question that we're here to talk about today. So the question that a lot of clients ask is, why do we actually need to manage the device? What is the actual point, right? And so it's not just, oh, we want stuff to see in the console. It's different things, right? Number one thing on my mind is delivering quality of life enhancements. Examples are like, pre-configuring Office to do, to deliver certain things in Windows, or, delivering, Kerberos single sign-on mobile, delivering all these different types of kind of synergies and deployments. Also, another aspect of it is device health. Those of you who manage Windows, you know all about how we now are doing Windows attestation, how we're using stuff like Dell Command Monitor to kind of help refine and see where we're actually at from a health perspective. Then on top of all that, of course, we're securing devices. Hopefully not securing devices in a bad way like a lot of people do, but actually securing devices in a way that actually makes sense. Like, don't just lock everything down, find a good balance between security and functionality. And then simply, like I alluded to a little bit, is delivering configurations and settings to simplify onboarding, which is always a really important thing, is making sure you're helping empower that onboarding journey, leveraging whether, some provisioning thing, whether it's the dropship provisioning or old Dell provisioning, and just trying to make and build that as great as you possibly can. And then finally, delivering apps easily, eliminating the need for administration, and a lot of those kinds of aspects. And then in finality, there's also the limiting of admin access, as we are able to now do, with stuff like Mac OS and DEP, as an example, where we can manage admin credentials, rotate them, and still deliver all the things they need without actually extending admin. Because a lot of our clients in America, they actually refuse to give people local admin. And I don't know, is it more liberal here in EU, or is local admin a problem for you guys? Okay, a lot of whenever I post on the Slack, the Mac admin Slack, I get chastised by about 15 people at least when I say, "Why don't you just give them local admin?" Because you can't just give them local admin, and that's a big problem that I deal with a lot, and a lot of people seem to. Maybe it's more in education; they just don't think it's a thing. So if we can just spend a couple minutes, and we're going to talk about how SaaS has kind of evolved in recent years for those of you who've been in IT for more than a few minutes. So in the last 5 to 7 years, SaaS has really evolved quite rapidly. So historically speaking, you used to have to be some large company in order to, say, have Salesforce. You'd have to spend, tens of thousands of dollars every year and all that. But now what they've started to do is kind of evolve it a little bit and make it so that many different companies can leverage technologies like Salesforce. You've got products like Bamboo HR, Microsoft, obviously Office 365, and all these different types of technologies have kind of empowered that. So as you see here, a lot of these products, like you could never actually have something like Power BI as a small business, 5+ years ago. You've got Okta, obviously Jira Service Desk, you've now kind of gotten outside of the whole spreadsheet methodology and then started delivering these very dynamic technologies that can kind of potentially work together. And that actually now has opened up the door for a lot of small businesses to be able to do and just kind of be a little bit more. Now, if bringing all that into focus and we talk about what some of the reality of small business, some of the challenges they face. So number one challenge that we deal with quite frequently are cloud-only accounts. This being, as those of you who manage Workspace will know, when you have cloud-only accounts, nothing is really great, right? You've got the Okta thing that Steve and Daryl Miles, works for VMware, have kind of publicized out a little bit. But still, it's still kind of disparate. Maybe one day we'll actually see the whole identity framework that they've been talking about for I don't know how many years now. You also have SaaS platform limitations. Certain things they can or can't do if you don't have a full directory. That also creates a lot of kind of problems and challenges for us. You've got credential management. This is a big one for me because, like a lot of products, they don't support certificate-based auth, and I still see, I don't know if you guys, I see a lot of clients still using Kerberos. And at Explore this year, the guy who created Zero Trust was there, who was a former CTO or whatever, right, for Palo Alto. And the thing that I learned the best from that session, it was probably the best session I attended at Explore, is that I like that he said that with Zero Trust, it's not even about Zero Trust anymore. It's about what every vendor's like interpretation of Zero Trust actually is. And I can tell you right now, if you're doing Kerberos, you're not doing Zero Trust. Because, period, if you're not doing cert-based auth, you can't really achieve it. One of the great things that I do like, those of you who, just show hands, who actually heard my podcast with Brian Madden about Okta some years back that was vilified quite well. I had I'm going to start name dropping because that's just who I am. Adash Kasari came up to me and basically finger wagged me for 20 minutes at Explore 3 years ago for that podcast. Because I famously have said, which is going to make me a hypocrite, so this will be fun for everybody, is that most customers don't need Okta. And that's the truth. Most companies don't need an Okta. It's $100,000, right? So why not spend that money on like a Casby or this or that or whatever? And the thing is that a lot of these platforms and products don't support certificates. And the reason that podcast happened is because Brian Madden said that Access is not IDP, which is idiotic. Because there's two real requirements for an IDP. Skim, do stuff with Skim stuff. So it's really one requirement, right? And so it drives me crazy. These other things, like, don't support cert-based auth. Like, you can't get cert-based auth with Okta. You can't get you can do it with Ping, but it's shitty. Pardon my French. American, I apologize. But like, you just can't deliver certificates the way you want to. So I actually, at our company, I flipped it on its head, and I actually use Okta as the IDP, and I send my stuff to Access to do cert-based auth, so that I deliver Zero Trust at our company. Because, you know, for me, if we're cloud-based, we don't want to use Kerberos because Kerberos is bad and old, and it's from like 1927. I want Zero Trust, and so I have to do certs, and I have to flip that thing kind of, you know, on its head. Onboarding and offboarding, right? Big problems. Is there anybody? So I'm sure most of us are consultants, right? I don't know how many are direct customers that are in this crowd. Is there anybody who's not doing provisioning right now? Like, they're not. When I say that, if there's an app that's actually being provisioned and deprovisioned, I'll go a different way. Can you, on one hand, name the amount of customers, or do you need more than one hand that don't do automated provisioning of applications today? Like, that aren't actually using, he has many hands, right? And I'm sure, I probably didn't really explain it well, but like the whole point, right, is that most customers, with the products that they use, they can't automate the actual provisioning. So when somebody leaves, they have to go and deprovision this app or that app or that app or that app. And a lot of that problem is that either they don't have the right Microsoft licenses if they're doing it that way, or they don't have Okta, or they don't have Ping. But it's, in general, onboarding and offboarding is a really, really big problem that we deal with. And then the crux of all these things together is that you have a very poor user experience. I worked for a company 4 or 5 years ago who felt that single sign-on was the fact they could authenticate with LDAP, which is bad. If you have to put in your username, bad. If it's not seamless, you're not doing it right. And I mean, that's always been my thing, right? Is that you want to deliver a seamless user experience. Security through obscurity, right? If you're not actually doing what you're meant to do, and it's not seamless, and you're just getting there, then what is the freaking point? And like I said, that's always been like, I guess, a big thing with me, right? And so if we talk about some of these common failure points, like I just said, SSO is not username and password. That is what you did in 2005. Now, it is, at worst, you put in your username and you're seamlessly in. And then you click any other app and you're just there. And it just works. Like that's literally the point. App installs happening over Zoom sessions. I still see it. Does anybody see this? Does anybody see this with any of their clients today? I still see it. None of you? Come on, let's do hands. Let's be interactive. You don't have a single client that has to have somebody on a help desk install an app over a Zoom session or an assist session. It happens all the it's terrifying. It happens all the time. Yeah. yes, I've actually seen clients where they actually use the antivirus that's built in. Maybe not Avast, because I don't know how big Best Buy is in Europe, but there's something. And I've seen, unfortunately, quite a bit of that. Okay, raise your hand if you have a client that's doing imaging. Bad, 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 bad. Windows 10 came out, what, a while ago. The whole point of Windows 10 that you don't use GPOs and you use goddamn CSPs. And I see so much of this, it's terrifying. I got an email. So those of you who know Mark, who's a VCDX, great guy, long flowing white hair, like Slayer, that Mark. I got an email from, because we're working with them right now, and we're doing Workspace One stuff with them because we're just very fortunate. He's a great guy, and he's helping some of my younger guys get some experience. And they said, we have a customer who needs help with imaging. And I was like, what the? Like, I mean, it's just like, it's amazing that this is still the way people are thinking. Like, it's so much work. So I was the flagship customer for Dell provisioning in 2019. I presented it at Dell Tech World. And so so I worked for Talbot's, who, again, I'm not in America, so I say words nobody knows the hell I'm talking about. Talbot's makes women's dresses. And women actually go there a lot to buy dresses. So Talbot's, their onboarding was legitimately like 3 weeks for a user. It went from 3 weeks to a day, to like 2 hours after we rolled out Dell provisioning there. Manual configuration. We all see it all the time, right? You have like, oh, here, go double click this registry key. Someone will like email them something, or they'll go install something in SCCM. Again, if you're using SCCM, you're doing it wrong. And you don't know how many of these SCCM admins I fought with at Dell Tech World, because they're grizzly as shit. They are. Like, they will go to the wall like Hodor over SCCM. I'm right, though. Everyone knows I'm right because you damn tell them to get off SCCM. And the beauty of our friend Microsoft is, oh, sure, we now have a cloudified version of SCCM, but we're going to charge you for every single bit of data that gets egressed. Because thank you, Microsoft. You're beautiful. So let's talk about the first part of what we did. Transforming cloud identities. So out of curiosity, I feel like I'm the only person that uses it. Does anybody have a client using Azure ADDS? Awesome. I absolutely love this product, right? $1,200 a year. You literally turn Azure AD into LDAP. It's beautiful. I love it. It just works. You upload make sure you update your cert. Don't be stupid, like me. You update your cert every year. You get it going. It's simple as hell, right? And then you can, you do what you do, right? And it works great. Rumors are Microsoft might get rid of it, but they've been saying that for a while. I hope they don't, because I love it. So that was the first thing we did, right? We transformed. And we took all of our identities, because we had like 3 AD accounts, everyone else Azure AD. We transformed them through this whole technology. And those of you who aren't familiar, it's a service that's hosted in Azure. Basically, you literally just go enable it. And you enable it, you upload a cert, and basically you now have an LDAP directory. And what it does is it actually synchronizes all your cloud identities essentially into LDAP, users and groups, and you can treat them the same way you treat AD. So AD and DC in a cloud. One thing is if you are, have this misfortune of having to deploy stuff in Azure, you also get the main join with that. Horizon Cloud works very nicely. Does anyone doing Horizon Cloud with Azure ADDS at all? Because that's one of the cool things a lot of people don't realize is that with Azure ADDS, you can do Azure ADDS, Horizon Cloud on Azure, and actually have the main join powered through, which is neat. As I said, secure LDAP. One problem, however, is basically no CA services. Unless you want to manually create certificates, but nobody wants to manually create certificates. And as I said, Horizon Cloud on Azure. So this is what your end result kind of looks like. Our friend LDP. You can see here is it basically creates a whole domain structure. So you have your LDAP directory, which you can now integrate into Workspace ONE. We lock it down, obviously, because we're not stupid. We don't want to get in all kinds of trouble. So we lock it down to our lovely, ever-evolving and changing Workspace ONE IP address range. And then we also use a service account, obviously. I don't know why I put this in the slide, but I guess I put it because I needed a third bullet point. So when we talk about cloudifying Workspace ONE UEM, that's how we did it, right? We now have all these identities. I want to point out the second one, the illustrious Johan von Emmersforth, back from when we were doing some crazy stuff for VMworld 2 years ago. So what we do is we set up SMTP against Office 365, which is easy as hell, which we'll show you in a minute. We have that LDAP integration for user and group synchronization. Works beautifully. And then we also have Azure AD integration for automated MDM enrollments, which we don't really cover too much. The real key to know is that with Azure ADDS, it has a different object GUID than Azure AD, because again, they're stupid. So we actually have automation we built in Okta to actually handle that, which we'll see later on. And then, of course, with Azure AD, you have all of the great compliance. You have kind of building that synergy from A to B. We're going to watch we're just going to watch a quick demo. Most people know how to do this anyway, but I'm just going to kind of show you.
Now let's go over how everything comes together now that we have AADDS set up. First, we're going to want to look at the SMTP, and we're currently pointing to the Office 365 SMTP server. We're on port 587. And then for the username, we'll note that we are using an onmicrosoft.com username. This is because we are currently federated with Okta, and this will, if you're federated with another service, you will also have the same. And then we have the password, and then the sender's name and address directly below it. Also to note, you will have to message your Office 365 admin and have him add the Workspace ONE IP addresses so that we can get in. Now let's move over to directory services. What we did was create a DNS name for the Azure ADDS public IP, which is our LDAP server. And we have it going to port 636 with a verify SSL certificate. And then you will bind the username and the password so that everything connects. If you go up, we have the users and groups. You can see the base DN. Make sure that is correct. And they actually match because users and groups in AADDS have the same base DN. Now we're going to go validate that this actually works. We're going to use a user group and see if we can pull down a AD group from AADDS. So we're going to go add user group, and now let's search for a group. They're all currently added, but we're going to search for a group anyway and see if we can get some to pop down. We're looking at Reich, and so we can see these three groups, and you can see that it's to ADDC, verifying that these groups actually pulled down from Azure ADDS.
Favorite part of that is how bad Microsoft is at designing their own products, because groups and users should not be at the same level. But we won't digress on that. So now we talk about cloudifying Workspace ONE access, which is relatively easy. You can either do a local sync, which you really shouldn't do if you have more than 100 devices. Everyone here knows that. I'm just saying it anyway. Or what I did is so when you do Azure ADDS, you build an Azure VM for management. For Azure ADDS, so if you want to look at users or whatever. And so in that, I installed my Access connector just because it was just more reliable and I didn't have to worry about it as much, which was good. So now that we have kind of like the backbone and the basis, we talk about how we kind of leverage some partners to get there, right? So let's talk about a couple of gaps in the whole Azure ADDS transformation that we saw. So the one that we mentioned earlier is Azure ADDS has an object GUID. So the reason why this matters, just so you're aware, is that when you go through an Azure AD automated enrollment during UBI on a Windows 10 device, if they don't match, it bombs out and fails and throws up all over itself. Because what it actually does is when you put your identity in there, it actually does a object GUID match. It looks at your object GUID for your identity you logged in with, and it compares it to see if it finds a matching user, and if it doesn't, it just throws up all over itself. Not dissimilar from me at VMware Explore this year. But password resets are a really big problem. because with Azure AD DS, you cannot do any authentication whatsoever. So that was a very, very big issue for us. And then also no seamless single sign-on for a actual Windows device. And one of the initiatives we took in 2022 was trying to go completely password free. And so we'll talk about how we did some of this stuff. So again, I am a giant hypocrite because I went and I freaking bought Okta after telling Brian Madden nobody should buy Okta. Yet, nevertheless, I bought Okta. But I didn't buy it for single sign-on. I bought it for Okta workflow. One of the things I like about Okta that they've done, and what makes me only half a hypocrite, is what they've done is they Ping is stupid. Okta is less than stupid because Ping and Okta are kind of like the whole BlackBerry iOS thing. Ping has kind of traded on the whole idea that they have a lot of on-prem customers. That's the majority of their customers, really. They're strong customers. Whereas Okta has evolved. They started realizing that they need to be more than just an IDP. They're delivering and developing all kinds of security services and all kinds of seamlessness in these different fashions. One of the things that they're doing is they have Okta workflows, which we're going to talk about in a second. So automated user and group provisioning is one of the things that we really rely strongly on in Okta now, is we run our entire business process through it. Okta workflows, as I mentioned, which are a very low-code thing. That is what, and if anyone done anything with experience workflows? I'm sorry, because, right, it's as painful as hell, right? It's bad you now miss mobile flows, but it's like literally, those of you who are, it costs $100,000 to build a new app in experience workflows. That's the actual cost it'll cost you to build a new Boomi app. It's insane. What I wish it was what Okta Workflows is, which is a true, low code, no code solution, which is very simple and basic and relatively doable. Onboarding and offboarding is one of the big things that we really took advantage of. So we use an HR system called Bamboo HR, which is becoming very, very popular in small and medium business. And so we use that as a source of truth that flows into Okta and then flows out, builds accounts, provisions apps, sets up their email, does literally everything. And Okta FastPass was our strategy for our contractors because we only give laptops to our employees. So with our contractors, we're using Okta FastPass as a passwordless means of authentication into all our systems now, as we're just trying to do better. So now we're going to take a couple minutes. Anyone who really hates Okta and you want to go take a break, you can go do that. This is going to show you what an Okta Workflows demo actually looks like and shows you exactly how simple it is. I'll be honest with you, I was very intimidated by Okta Workflows. I actually went and paid somebody on Upwork to build a workflow for me because I was like, I can't do this shit. And then once I actually understood how it worked, I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. So just kind of show you what.
Now we're going to use Okta Workflows to update our user's object GUID. We found this was an issue because in AADS, the object GUID is different than it is in Azure AD. Thus, when the account is synced up into Workspace ONE, it creates two accounts, which immediately became an issue. So this is how we did it. We started by adding an event, which is essentially a trigger to run this workflow. And we're going to say when a user is added to a group, this will kick off. And then we're going to want to do a if statement saying that Synterex employees is equal to the group that the user was added to. So if the user was added to the Synterex employees group, we're going to start this if. And we're going to start with a function called wait. This is to allow for replication, so we can have all those fields populated and everything ready to go. We're going to want to then read the user in Okta. So we're going to take that user that just was added to that group, and we're going to read him. We are going to see the user's name and the object GUID. And so we're going to take the Okta user ID out of there and add him in. So we're going to be looking at the user that was added to this group. Then let's do another wait because we're patient. Let's do another 10-minute wait here. And now we're going to want to do a replace. This is because when you are federated in Okta, you are no longer to make changes to the Azure AD account. Thus, this became quite a problem. So what we're going to do is take the username that we just grabbed from this user, and we're going to look for the syntarex.com in it, which is our domain. And since we can no longer make changes to it when it's in syntarex.com, let's just update that. So let's make it the syntarex.onmicrosoft.com account name. So now we're going to change it, the username, to the user plus the syntarex.com. I mean, syntarex.onmicrosoft.com. And now let's update that user in Office. So we're going to do a Office 365 admin call, and we're going to want to update that user. Now that we've created the onmicrosoft.com, we will want to update the user principal name of the user. So let's take the username of the user, and let's throw in the result text from this replace into the user principal name. And so we're looking at this user and we're updating them to the onmicrosoft.com version. And now we're going to want to name.
I'm going to save everyone time. We end up just doing the inverse there. But I mean, obviously the key thing to take away from that is it's relatively easy and Microsoft replication sucks. So we all know that. So the next thing that we kind of tried to solve was cert-based authentication, right? So you're cloud only, you don't have a CA. So I believe I was the first person to use it because they actually started tweeting out my stuff. So there's a company called Skepman. Anyone ever heard of Skepman before? I would think a lot of people, because they're actually based over here, I believe. So Skepman, they are built for Intune, and basically they host a CA in the cloud on something called Azure App Services. And so they build this like CA, they spin it up, and I take that, I spin it up, I integrate it with Workspace One, and I actually deliver, we can actually now, with this, you can deliver certificates in the exact same way that you would if you had your own CA. And it's actually relatively inexpensive, to be honest with you. Like, it's going to be like, we probably pay like $70 a month or something stupid. It's so inexpensive for what you get out of it. And like I said, it was just a great solution because you're paying for Azure App Services, obviously costs in Azure, but overall, it's really not too bad. Very, very simple setup. Works the same way from a security perspective. You get like a shared secret that you leverage from the SCEP perspective. And it plugs right in, and it's actually what's powering our zero trust strategy, where we're using that certificate to deliver a single sign-on on our Windows devices with device compliance and just kind of securing the edge there. So like I said some months back, user experience really, for the most part, it's 30% about it is about being simplistic. And when I say that is, the running theme I learn a lot in IT every day is that IT people are so friggin' obsessed with showing people how goddamn smart they are. I've sat in these meetings where people go, WebSockets, WebSockets, WebSockets. Like they want to show like, oh, I have, I'm just the best. It's like, who cares? In EUC, at least, it's about being simple, using the right technology for the right problem, and just hoping it all friggin' works. Because most of us, right, will spend like 8 or 10 hours on a problem, cannot figure it out, and eventually it just works. Like you don't know why it works. It's just working. I'm not touching it again. I'm just going to leave it. And just sometimes stuff works that way. And so obviously we discussed earlier about just how bad Windows management can be. Because as I said, it's a hubris problem. It always is that, and we're all guilty of it to a degree, is that like we sometimes start off in the hardest way possible. Like, did you make sure the printer is plugged in, right? Like that's a problem I think we all make, especially as you get more and more experience and you become better and better at what you do, you tend to forget the basics. I think sometimes that you learn when starting out, and so I really just think keeping things simple, keep it simple, stupid is always a good adage because simpler is just more often not better. Because at the end of the day, we just want it to work. That's really what matters. And realistically speaking, we have more and more at our disposal to make the magic happen. This is a lovely slide that they make you use at Explore. And so I get kind of Johnified it a little bit. We talked about like kind of the 4 different pillars of the end user experience. One is the user login experience, which we simplified with certs. Another was provisioning, which we delivered via Okta and automated user provisioning and group provisioning. Something we're going to talk about in a minute is how we move away from GPOs and we go more towards CSPs, leveraging a product. Out of curiosity, has anyone here not heard of Policy Builder? I figured more people wouldn't, because one of the things that frustrates me with VMware is I don't think they do a good enough job of publicizing some of these great flings that they build. Like, I honestly had never used Policy Builder before writing these slides. I made things hard on myself. I was literally writing syncML on a custom thing, and it was stupid of me. And after finally finding Policy Builder, it actually really made life a lot more easier for me. And then lastly, securing the edge, talking about things like experience workflows, leveraging Deem if you're not already today, which is great because it comes with your enterprise licensing for your customers. Zero Trust, leveraging EDRs, which is something that we're doing with Windows Defender for endpoint. We're actually using Workspace ONE profiles, and we were able to deliver automated enrollment of it. And so speaking on experience workflows a little bit, here are some of the things that we have done with experience workflows. We're using Jira Service Desk as, our ITSM solution, and we're delivering one-touch approvals. I'm very fortunate that I'm friends with Lucas Chen because he gave me experience workflows. I don't know why he did. I'm not going to ask. I still have it. It hasn't been taken away yet. But I'm very fortunate that I do have it because that has been very helpful for me. Another thing we're also doing is Adobe Sign notifications to help speed up the process. Keep in mind, these are all built in, and that's the biggest problem with experience workflows is they don't have they don't have enough there yet. I'm hoping that they're going to do better, but they're not quite there yet. Also, Zoom meeting recording notifications that come relatively quickly. And LinkedIn Learning course suggestions, which I do wish they were doing the actual curated content, but course suggestions are what we have to live with for now. And this is a quick video to show you just how easy it is to set up EX workflows if you're not familiar.
Now we're going to show you how we set up experience workflows. It will help you and automate approvals and some different things that will enhance your user experience greatly. So you can see that we are in Hub Services, and you go to Experience Workflows, and you can see that we already set them up, but we're going to go over the Jira Service Desk ticket approvals. You're going to hit the gear icon, and it will take you into the configuration integration. All we're going to worry about is the Jira ones. So we're going to look at the Jira Authentication Connector, which is set to auth.atlassian.com, and the Jira connector, which is set to api.atlassian.com. We're going to hit continue. Now we're going to go over the Jira Service Desk properties section. The initial run days that we currently have set is 30. Now for the client ID and the client secret, you're going to want to navigate to your Atlassian developer console. So you'll go into the developer console once you log in. You're going to see the Jira Workspace ONE app that we created. Now you're going to go to settings. And at the bottom, you'll see the client ID and your client secret to copy out. And paste them right into your client ID and client secret within the experience workflows. For the redirect URI, you have to put in something. We're just using the old Mobile Flows one, which is fine. For the system name, we're using Jira Service Desk. For the Workspace ONE Access user groups, you're able to create some and put them in there if you want to. We currently don't have any set up. And then you'll want to put in an error email notification DL to send email notifications to your IT team if something's not working. The hard part is the authorization code. So we're going to show you how we figured that out. So you're going to want to set up the URL. It's broke up into a couple parts. So you'll see that there's an audience, which is the api.atlassian.com, and then the client ID, which we found earlier. Then you'll see all the scopes, which you want to match and make sure that those permissions are correct that are in the scope. And then you'll want to put your redirect URI, which we found earlier. And then you're going to put the URL together, and you'll want to copy it out and paste it into an incognito window. And you'll see that in the video. So once you pop it in, you're going to want to sign in to Atlassian. Now it's going to have you grant authorization, and you'll choose your site and hit accept. Now it'll look like you failed, but the result of the URL up there, you'll see that there is a code inside it. You will copy that out, and you'll just simply paste it into the authorization code. And then you're done, and hit continue.
So kind of painful, kind of painless, but pretty straightforward. So real quick, we'll
Now
show one last
we're going to
demo
show
here.
you the user experience now that we have Jira Service Desk ticket approvals set up through the experience workflows in the Service Hub. So here you can see a standard Jira ticket, and this specific ticket requires a manager's approval from our company. I am currently a approver for this ticket, so I will be receiving an approval notification through the hub that we just set up. So let's go ahead and hit send, and we're going to move over to my phone where you'll see the approval come in. Here you can see the hub notification coming in. Upon selecting it, it'll redirect you to the For You page where you can select View in Jira Service Desk. Here, a Jira page will pop up where you can view the ticket and then hit approve. There is another experience workflow that I would like to show you from Zoom. At the top, you'll see another notification coming in from a Zoom meeting. I recorded the meeting, and here is the recording link that comes in when it's done. It's a nice notification that can further enhance your user experience.
Okay. So just a couple other things to kind of cover real quick before we close up shop for today. So I hate buzzwords, but we're going to use one anyway. Deem is or Dex, or whatever the hell you want to call it now, is the new fancy thing. Gartner's is talking a lot about it right now. My whole thing on Deem is it's probably the most impactful thing that you can do if you're not doing it today. So the basic crux of Deem is you get real-time app analytics. Idea around that is that you'll get app crashes, app communications, things like that, letting you know where your app actually is at, and helps you kind of get to a point where you're able to kind of automate ticket creation and generation and help address issues, get tickets opened, and be able to help people quicker and faster. Employee surveys is an interesting concept. It's not really where it needs to be yet. I don't know if anyone's played around with it at all. My main gripe around surveys is the fact that they don't work real well with some of the Deem stuff, because like my expectation would be is that you'd want to fire off a survey, say if somebody had like an app, say, crash like 5 times within like a week or whatever, but they don't. It's one for one, which I think is a problem right now. I've provided feedback. Hopefully they do get there. Device health is also another area where Deem is focused. And of course, the idea is that it's driven by your automations. Essentially, you find something, you create an automate. It's if this, then that. You say, okay, if someone's app, crashes, open a ticket, send a notification, whatever it is that you actually want to do. But I said Deem it's an area that's untapped for the most part. There's only a couple of players in the space, depending on who you ask, control up yucky. Next thing, not so bad. But there's a lot of opportunity there. I think the real question with VMware in Theme is how quickly can they actually innovate and deliver the functionality they've been promising.
Now we're going.
We don't have a lot of time, so I will, if anyone is interested in any of the demos that I don't show, feel free to let me know and I can send you the deck. But this is a kind of a demo showing how the automated ticket creation works. Fun fact, if you have experienced workflows and you do this, they create anomalous errors. So every time you get an approval, you get a thing saying 404 not found, because the experienced workflows and this do not work well together at the same time. The last thing that's to mention is the policy builder, like I mentioned, which is a GUI fling that basically allows you to select stuff and it gives you the code to put in for your custom XML. It was built originally by Mike Nelson, who was behind Forklift. Those of you may or may not be familiar with it. Basically, it'll build your custom XML. We actually use this to deploy Microsoft Defender cleanly, which if you ask Microsoft, you can't do, but guess what? You can. This is, like I said, if you're GPO heavy, it's a nice, easy way to kind of shift a little bit away from that. But again, it relies on Microsoft CSPs. Just final thoughts. We found that not just being more open-minded and smart and realizing that it's more than just Workspace ONE's not a panacea, right? It's a good means to an end, but you need friends to help you along the way. It's like the idea, right? You don't know everything, right? So sometimes you need friends to help you out. And it's the same kind of mentality, right? Is that you can get yourself a lot of the way there, but by using certain partners, we're able to kind of go full circle. Seamless SSO for everybody, that's really the main theme, is making sure that you're delivering seamless experiences, because if you're not doing it right. Onboarding and offboarding of users obviously is crucial. Then tidying it up with just the fact that zero trust is the paradigm that is crucial today. And at the end of the day, right, let's just do something that makes sense. Let's be helpful. We don't have to show that we're smart. Let's just show that we actually care. Thank you very much.